Hey, everybody! Happy Wine Wednesday. I'm drinking out of the glass, and I've got my Seahorse glass on the side as per usual, so I don't break it. But you can still admire it in the little left hand in the right screen. Anyways, hope your week was great. Hope your seahorses and reef tanks are doing fabulously. I have Cheryl and Holly with me tonight. Francis we were going to try to get Francis in tonight, but he's actually dealing with an acrylic, excuse me, froggy throat, dealing with an acrylic tank right now. So if he's able to jump in, he will, but he'll be with us in the chat either way. Ray couldn't be here tonight again. He's just a busy beaver and has some stuff going on, but he's still around and he'll come back probably next week. Also, next week is supposed to be the second episode of Ask Seahorse Source, but watch for a post because I'm going to have to check and make sure with Dan that he's still available and able to come and had time to work on everything. So I will let you guys know for sure this week. It's been a hectic week for me, so I haven't done much of anything. Sorry. Ended up in the ER one night. It was terrible. I literally thought I was having a heart attack, and it ended up being really bad heartburn. So lovely week it's been. But anyways, let me get the chat open. If just for as usual, if you're on Instagram, so kind. If you're on Instagram, it probably looks funny, the formatting. You can absolutely just listen to us on Instagram, or you can jump over to YouTube and you can see the full video. Also, if you do jump on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. We're like 40 people away from our 3,000 subscriber giveaway. So, hey, Seahorse Corner, how you doing? It's just open chat tonight, so chat away. Jump in if you want. I think you still have the link, or whatever. Anyways, now I'm gonna stop rambling. And Holly, what were we talking about right before we went live? How's thing 2?
Thing 2 is doing well, and the part of his body that used to have the hole is very close gone now. Tail still has a long way to go. So I'm still using the debride on him. And one thing that I wanted advice on tonight was knowing when to stop the antibiotics in the water, the sulfaplex and canaplex. He's still not got the greatest appetite, really. Like he'll be on and off. Sometimes he'll snick a few to several pieces of food. Sometimes he doesn't want to eat. Sometimes he'll eat just one or two. I'm trying to feed him about 3 to 4 times a day when I'm home every few hours. And when I'm working, I'm gone sometimes during the day. So then he'll get 2 feedings. And I've noticed when I do that, he'll be like more hungry and eat more food when he's gone longer in between. But his poops are starting to look more black than white most of the time. But I'm just kind of wondering, how am I going to know when to stop those antibiotics? Not the topical ones, but
how long have you been treating him now with antibiotics?
months. I mean, we're on probably month 3 right now.
I would back off on the antibiotics and just watch him very closely and see if there's any deterioration. Because after this long, any bacteria that is susceptible to those antibiotics is going to be long gone or should be long gone.
Okay. Now, backing off, you say, does that mean I should give him half doses for a while or just stop it altogether?
I would stop it and give it like 3 days and see if his food consumption increases and if there's any changes in the wounds. Those would be the 2 things you're looking for. Because at this point, as long as he's been on, 10 days is normally, I shouldn't say that. I've gone as long as 21 days with tail problems.
Mm-hmm.
But you're so far beyond that now. I question
Yeah,
whether there's any efficacy anymore.
Mm.
this round, I want to say I started not long after Christmas. So it's been like this round has been pretty much all of January.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
before
go
that,
ahead.
he was 50, I think it was 64 days
The thing,
when we were at Christmas.
the thing is, if he does start showing signs of deterioration, if you take him off the antibiotics, I would switch him to different antibiotics also.
Okay.
Well, she did. Remember, she went from
Well, I went from Furan 2 to the Sulfaplex and Canaplex. But what is my next go to? Because
I'm
the
thinking you
ones I
might want.
have are Neoplex and something called Metroplex, but I know
I was going to
one's
suggest
for
Metro
girls.
because it has antiparasitic and antibacterial properties.
So the Metro would be the next one if he needs more.
yeah, but I think I agree with what Cheryl said to begin with. If he's gotten better, like as she said, usually we do the 10-day and Dan's dosage. I think it's amazing that you kept treating him and that he's gotten better. But if you feel like he's better, I would not do more antibiotics because the fear in doing them too long or too much
Mhm.
is that if anything happens to him in the future, it won't work again because he'll be
Yeah.
resistant to
Do you
the.
have any probiotics, aquarium probiotics?
I want to say I might. I'll have to look in the refrigerator and see because there's something you told me to get once that I got and I haven't used it. I got it a few
Okay.
months back. I don't remember what it is. It's a little bottle. I'll have to grab it. I think
Well,
it was to add to your water when you're starting out a tank, I think. And I
okay.
Well,
think
that wouldn't be probiotics. Like
Yeah.
the probiotics I have from Dan it's called Mike F. Comes in a white tub.
MIC-F. I
Yeah.
believe Todd Ragsdale uh, took over that portion, or you could double check with Alicia. What I'm thinking is the probiotics basically they're designed to remove bad bacteria and
Mhm.
add good bacteria to the tank that helps the GI tract and everything
uh-huh.
else. And I'm thinking it might actually act as an appetite stimulant
Oh,
for him.
Let me
I'll be
see.
right
I have
back. I
a
lost
couple
my
things.
ear thing.
I'm sorry?
Let me grab what I have. I have a couple things. I might have a thing of probiotics. Let me see
Okay,
what I
because it is
got.
a powder. It is in a powdered form.
What I have is liquid. So is it always powder?
The MIC-F are always in a powdered form.
Let me see what I got. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Yeah, go grab it. And yeah, the only thing I was saying too is just that that's always my big fear when you start using antibiotics for a long period of time is that you know then they won't work if anything else goes wrong and the seahorse just it doesn't work anymore like you were
Right.
saying.
Yeah. Well,
So
if anything that's still alive after that long is either developed a
immunity to
resistance
it,
or it's dead.
resistance. Exactly.
And that's why I'm thinking back off, see how he does.
Yep.
And if she can get the probiotics, it will help make sure the tank stays clean throughout
Yep.
all of this.
Well, I was when she gets back, I'll tell her I can send her some because I
Well,
have
I
2
have
bottles of it.
something. I have this. It says probiotic.
That's not the same.
Yeah,
Not
it's
the
not.
same. That's like Eco Balance. I get them confused, but I believe Eco Balance. One of them's a lot like peroxide, works like peroxide, but like Waste Away and Eco Balance are typically for. I know it says it's a probiotic. I mean, maybe it is a
Yeah, it says
version. I don't know.
multi-strained probiotic bacteria. Adds friendly, supportive bacteria to maintain a balanced environment, specific probiotics against Vibrios.
Well, it can't hurt.
Yeah, that one exactly. And it may actually help because it's designed to basically mess with the bad guys and help propagate the good guys.
Oh, and Seahorse Corner said she uses Eco Balance on fry tanks. Nice. So, I mean, that's literally, I use Mike F on fry tank. So,
Antibacteria. So will that be good for him, or is that not really what I need, you think?
I would use it. I mean,
If you've got it, I would start using it.
Okay. 2 caps per 10 gallon is the maximum dose. So should I maybe just use like half of that to start? Or what do you think?
because let's ask
small
the
tank.
Seahorse Corner, because she's actually using it. And I'm curious too, because I get the products mixed up unless I'm looking at them. But I know one of them, it's really important that you don't use it with anything else and don't overuse it. So, Seahorse Corner, what would you suggest the full dose? Okay, she adds 10 milliliters daily for 30-gallon fry tank, and she believes that it helps. So there you go. It's not the same as Mike F, but it's probably a different form
She's got
of
it.
probiotics.
She's got it there.
Exactly.
And it's a good starting point. If it really works out and she runs out, she can order some by CF.
Yep.
Well, it's such a small amount. I don't think I'm going to run out. And we're talking milliliters here. Well, it says to put 10 milliliters per 10 gallon is the maximum, which is 2 capfuls, but it also causes oxygen levels to drop. So I don't really want to use very much of it, I don't think.
Well, so Seahorse Corner is using a third of the directed, because she's using 10 milliliters on a 30-gallon. And she's also doing daily water changes. So I would just try that. I mean, but make sure to do it, as directed. It's daily, right?
Which I'd have to do the water changes anyway, because he's in the hospital. So yeah, I think maybe a third of what they say. And
shoot, I'd do it on your main tank too. Like with
that's
probiotics, it doesn't hurt.
I haven't done it. But it's because they want you to turn off the skimmer and all, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to do it. And the big tank is your
I don't turn off the skimmer. It's when I'm using the
you know.
I don't either.
Yeah, then maybe
it probably takes some out, but on a bigger tank, it's not going to get to it as quickly. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, and Seahorse Corner said 5 milliliters is her suggestion for you, Holly. 5 milliliters.
Oh, thank you.
For 10. And now, did you mean 5 milliliters per 10 gallon or 5 milliliters period? Just curious.
Yeah, for the 10 gallon, I think because she knows he's in a 10 gallon.
Right. Gotcha. Sorry. Speaking of which, because Francis wasn't able to jump in, I wanted to mention too that the tiger tail is out of the woods. Did you know that, Cheryl? All your help with Francis, the tiger tail's better.
It is. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
I'm hoping he'll jump in.
We've been working on this for a while.
Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure you knew.
That's great news.
I know. I hope that he can jump in this week, next week, whenever he can, and actually show us the tiger tails doing better. It'd be great. But anyways, Holly, I don't think you were done. I kind of interrupted. And Seahorse Corner said, since you're doing water changes for the tank, 5 milliliter daily. Yeah. So was there something else you wanted to?
Well, so other than that, he's doing really well. We were talking earlier. He got interested in what I was doing this morning, because I normally hold him with his head underwater while I'm treating his body and his tail. And he's starting to get more comfortable and curious about what's going on. So this morning he was actually lifting his head out of the water to look at me.
I thought she had his head out of the water, and I messaged her to get him back in the water, basically. And that's when I found out that he did it to himself.
Yeah, that's funny. So I did. I lifted him up a little. I let him look. I was talking to him, and he was calm. So this afternoon, when I treated him for the first time, I actually let go of him while I was treating him just to see if he would stay there, and he did. And I had him with his head in the water, so he could have swam away, if he felt like it. But I had the timer going on my phone. There's chimes that go off, when the treatment's done, because I have to let it dry for 2 minutes. So he was relaxed and just laid there in my hand for the couple minutes, and then I dipped him more in the water to let him know it was time to go, and he kind of calmly, slowly swam off.
He's trained.
So, yeah, he's getting used to being
But,
handled
no,
because it's been a long time.
he's not trying to get behind the cover for the heater. What he's trying to do is hide from you when he knows you're going to grab him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, other times though too, because I found he got back there this morning and he was curled up under the heater, sleeping.
Wow.
Do you have a heater guard
And
on that heater in there?
no, that's why I have the barrier thing on it.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
right.
it doesn't come on very often because it's set to such a low temperature. But another thing is he's not hitching, so I don't think he'll try to hitch to it. But when you touch it, unless the heater's out of the water, they don't get really hot. I've noticed that kind of heater.
Hmm.
But I try to keep him away from it. He knows he's not supposed to go back there, and I lodge that blockade, between the glass of the tank. But sometimes it'll bow out. Like if it's bowing out at the bottom, he'll sneak in there. So we
Mm.
keep
Sneaky
rearranging it.
Yeah.
But
Just an FYI, they do make actual heater guards, and the heater
Mhm.
actually fits into them, and they're like a plastic, and they have a mesh
Yeah.
on them.
Mhm.
The holes are big enough that like some of the younger seahorses could get their tails in there to
Mhm.
hitch and possibly get burned.
Mhm.
But it wouldn't be, even if it happened, it wouldn't be the full tail wrap burning the
Yeah.
tail. And they're only like $4 or something like that.
I'll
See,
have
I
to
don't
look for
use
some
heaters,
of
so I'm no
those.
help here. Sorry.
Yeah, this is, and when I'm gone, I usually unplug it, too. Like if it's during the day because the house is warm enough.
Yeah.
It really only comes on generally in the very early mornings
But
or
I
at
Yeah.
picked up some of
about
those heater guards, and actually they're really kind of nice because
Mhm.
it not only keeps seahorses from burning, getting hitching to them,
Mhm.
but it also protects the heater if like a rock bumps it or anything else.
Oh, yeah, that makes
It's not
sense.
going to get damaged.
Yeah.
And if you're spending good money on an expensive heater, those things are cheap insurance.
Now,
Yeah.
do they come real small? Because this heater's real
Yeah.
small.
Well, they come in different. They when they send them to you, they come in multiple lengths, and you can take lengths out, and so you can elongate them or you can shorten them way down.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to
And they
look.
got
I bet I could find them on Amazon because I don't
that's
see
where
those
that's
in
where I
the
found them,
aquarium stores.
and I paid. I've got enough to do. I've got enough to do more heaters than I've got heaters right now because I ordered, I think, 4 of the extra long ones,
Uh-huh.
and the extra long ones were longer than what I needed. So now I have a bunch of them.
Here you go. This is it.
Cool. Yeah, I'll
Just
have
to
to
show
look
you real
for
quick.
those.
Here you go. This is the heater guard.
Yep,
That's
that's it.
one of them. Yeah. They have
Yeah,
different kinds,
four
but
Oh,
ninety nine. There it is, right there.
oh,
And
my heater has something like that on it.
be
On
careful
both.
though. The one with the bigger holes, the black one in the second row,
Uh-huh.
those have been reported to melt in aquariums. I did a lot of
oh, not good.
so
I
don't
like
get
that
that.
one.
Get the ones with the smaller. Go up, back up to the picture.
Okay.
Get this. The one that says aquarium fish tank heater protective case, detachable design.
Nice.
They're $11.59 on Amazon. They're half
Protective
that price.
case.
They're $4.99 on eBay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Of course, on
Well,
eBay,
and that looks pretty big too. I mean, this heater's little, so you can take out the
Yeah.
sections. I was
Well,
going to show
I'm
you. So there's
usually heaters
32
on 80 gallons
this
worth of
afternoon.
water. So.
So
Oh,
there he
wow.
is during his treatment.
Yeah, he looks a lot better.
That is
Seahorse
the
Corner.
The one where he's
Seahorse Corner also said she zip ties a coarse sponge to hers and can get Scott to make PVC to slide it into and drill a few small holes. Yeah, smart.
Mhm.
there he is looking at me.
He does look better. Wow. So much
Yeah,
better.
look at it. Well, it's hard because it lights up on the screen, but you can see the side where his hole was.
It's
It's
gone.
gone.
It's now pretty much gone. It's like, here we go. I enlarged it. So now you can see if I can position it right. It's kind of like a slit. Can you see
There's a
like
little, yeah, there's still a little bit of necrotic tissue on the spines, but the hole is completely gone,
It's
and
yeah.
amazing.
it shrunk so much. It looks so much better.
And you can see like if you look, there's like a little see if I can show see the little slit. It's hard on the
Yeah,
computer.
no, I see it what you're talking about.
But yeah, so there's just a little slit there. So I'm still treating him and then I'm concentrating on the tail part. So here's his tail.
Yeah, his
Kind of hard
tail.
to position it.
I don't know if he's going to save that tail or
Hanging
not.
by a thread.
Yeah. But
It
But
still looks a lot better.
it's looking a lot better. And I noticed
Yeah.
too in one of the pictures that you posted, he
Mhm.
actually had where the opening is, where the necrotic tissue is. He actually was using the whole tail to hitch,
yes,
Mm.
he's
and so
been using
he's
his
not
tail the
painful
whole
anymore.
time. He's not he doesn't hold on to stuff much. It's more of a draping that he does, and he tries to avoid holding on with that part,
Mm.
but he'll drape it on stuff, and he can hold on pretty good with the tip of his tail. I
That's
found
wow.
so I don't know. I don't know if he's going to lose it or not lose it, but it's very thin through that one
Mhm.
area, you
Uh,
know, so
I
it
saw
could go
pictures you
either way.
posted where he actually had his tail, the sore portion of the tail, wrapped around a hitch. Now I
Mhm.
don't know how much
Yes.
pressure he was putting on it, but up to this point, this is the first time I've seen him actually use that
Yeah.
portion of
Mhm.
the tail.
And
Yeah, he
Holly,
does
wait,
it more like draping. He'll touch it, like he'll wrap it around stuff, but I don't think uses
He's,
it really to hold on per
he's not really
se.
gripping with it. Yeah, that makes sense.
No.
so first of all, I wanted to say because I just looked at myself in the viewer. Sorry that I if I look bored, I'm exhausted, so it's just tired, guys. So I apologize. I'm paying. I really care. I'm so glad Thing Two's doing well. I just look like I'm like, it's because I'm tired. Anyhow, Seahorse Corner wants to know: will he have a scar there? Do seahorses scar or discolor?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why I think that is because my other seahorse, Timmy, I had in the hospital for a while. He got a bit of a bacterial infection after an injury. And I figured out it was an injury because after the bacterial infection healed, I could see the scars of where he had gotten scraped. And they're not there anymore.
Hmm.
A few months later, I can't tell. They're
Yeah.
gone. And with thing two, I mean, the tail part, I expect he'll always have part missing tail unless he loses it. But the part on his body that's healed, I mean, when you look at it with the picture, other than the part that hasn't fully healed yet, you can't tell.
Yeah.
You need to get that little guy that Heather has that was born with only part of a tail. Have you seen
Aw.
those?
They can be
Yeah,
tail
yeah.
buddies.
He's got a little
Mhm.
stub of a tail, and he's
And he was
born.
born that way?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
but
how
and
cute.
he hitches with all the other fry, and he
Mhm.
swims and he eats like a pig. I think he's one of the fattest youngsters I've seen in a long time. And Heather's like, yeah, he's a keeper.
Well, yeah. Between Heather and Holly and now Francis, you guys are just doing amazing things with these seahorses. My goodness.
Oh,
Just
another
shows you
thing,
don't have to
some
get rid of them.
news. I haven't heard back yet, but I went on the Koi Kennels website. You can, if you have a business, you can set up an account with them so you can sell their products. So I applied for an account so I can sell the DeBride.
Oh,
what
nice.
so I know people have been looking at it. Someone on Seahorse Source, Jamie, was looking for it. The place I got it, I guess, was out. The first place I tried to get it from was out. And so I did leave a message today for Kimberly that I was trying to get an account, and
Yep.
I got busy, but I'll try to call her again within the next day or two and talk to her about the DeBride and see if she's making it, if she has
Right.
some to sell. And
tell her to
so,
respond to my call about coming on the show.
oh, nice. Did you call her too? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Very
Hopefully we'll
cool.
get her in here. Yeah, go ahead. Anyways, I'm just showing Seahorse Corners posts while we go. I'm just so glad Thing 2's better. That'd be really awesome. So you're thinking about actually being the person that sells it? Like if you get the
Yeah.
account, you would be the store. Awesome.
I can
That'd be
sell
great.
it in my on my online store
Yeah.
that I use for my Seahorse stuff.
Yeah.
So
That'd be awesome.
yeah, I put in for that because I do have a tax ID and a seller's permit, so I
You
should
need to
be
get in
able to
contact with the probiotic people too. Shoot, you need to be getting us some products.
On a side note, I used some Elemax liquid on a bug bite that I got. That stuff burns like you know what when you apply it and there's any kind of a wound.
Oh, well, poor thing too, because I'm using that on him too. I put that on before I put on the DeBride. So maybe I should stop that and just use the DeBride, you think?
I'm thinking I would just use the DeBride at this point.
Okay.
See, Dan's the one that loves the Allison. I mean, he thinks it's like hugely
The thing
effective.
is, it's a great anti-inflammatory, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
But when I applied it and I had just a small little lump where I got an insect bite, all of a sudden it felt like my hand was on fire.
See, I've never had that experience.
And I've done it in other places and never had that kind of problem. So at least depending on some type of wound, that stuff really can burn.
Maybe it was the insect bite, the specific. Maybe it was.
It could be.
Oh, could be. Yeah. I don't know because he doesn't act like it hurts. I mean, he doesn't start squirming or
it may
anything.
not. Right. I mean, I applied it to a male that got stuck his head through a hole in a rock and got himself stuck and tried to get himself out. In the process, he had scratched up his snout, and his snout was just huge when I spotted him and got him out. Within 4 hours, it was back to normal size, and he was eating.
Wow, that's awesome. That's really great. Well, keep us updated on the DeBride. If Laura's still with us, I did see your question. I'm going to talk about that next. But first, we have Maria asking. She's looking to get new seahorses through Seahorse Savvy. Any recommendations on how many to get and which ones specifically that are hardier and fun?
If it's your first seahorses, get the Hippocampus erectus. And don't worry too much about colors. Alicia has some beautiful seahorses, but the really colorful ones tend to be a bit more expensive. And I would suggest you start with maybe 2, regardless of your size. Well, if it's at least 30 gallons, you can have 2 of the larger seahorses. And start with just 2, get the feel of it. That way you won't blow your biofilter. But before you do that, if you haven't already, go into Seahorse Sources group or Alicia Gabriel's Seahorse Savvy group on Facebook. Both of those, if you go into the files section, have all kinds of information on tank setup, what you need to know, what you need to consider, do's and don'ts, all kinds of. There's just a ton of information in both those groups.
And I just went to check on the site to see like if she had different species. And I know she has them. I'm looking now. I guess I could screen share it. Hang on. Well, I probably shouldn't because it's company. But what I was going to say is saddled erectus are the same as regular erectus. They just have pretty markings, right? So
I have, yeah.
Yeah. So, but northern are different. I think a lot depends on your goals. So, like if you're planning and hopefully wanting to breed, the northern erectus have a lower or gosh, I'm so tired today. I'm sorry, guys. The northern erectus have their babies quicker. I was going to say something smart with gestation period, but bottom line is they have less time that they're pregnant. So if that's something you're into, however, I think we've had discussions on here before that the northern are a little more picky. Like they don't like to. The regular erectus will eat anything you throw at them, and they're up and ready to eat. Whereas the northern are kind of more stay in their lane, and they you got to get them trained to get excited about food. So there's a few different things, but I totally agree with what Cheryl said. It depends on the gallon number. Geez, I can't talk tonight, you guys. It depends on how big your tank is. So if you have a 30-gallon tank, only get a pair. If you have a 75-gallon tank, just always use that two seahorses per 30 gallons is kind of the best recommendation for that one. And Maria's already on there, and she's all set up. She just lost her seahorse. Oh, you were down to one, right? I'm remembering now, right? The other thing I would say, Maria, is as you're set up, the one thing that I always wanted to be careful of is if I did lose seahorses for whatever reason, I would either use probiotics or give it like a little bit of time staying fallow, because you don't want to add new seahorses if there was a problem. Now I know I don't think yours had a problem, but just to throw it out there. Cheryl, do you agree with that? Or like
Yeah,
if you lose your seahorses, it's kind of dangerous to put new seahorses in right away, because unless you know what's the problem.
exactly. I mean, if it was an ammonia spike, that's one thing. But if it's bacterial, that's a whole different ballgame. And you don't want to just keep adding seahorses if you're losing seahorses because there's something going on in your tank.
Right, exactly. But we'd have to know the whole story. But definitely, those seahorses from Seahorse Savvy are gorgeous, and can't wait to see your new guys when you do get them. So yeah, let us know a little bit more. Like, oh, he had an injury. Okay, I got you, Maria. Never mind. Forget what I said. Then you're fine. Sorry. That's why it takes more questions, right? Because I want to make sure anybody who watches this in the future hears, don't add new ones if you just lost the old ones. But if it's an injury, that's totally different. So
Yeah.
I'm with you. And then your next question was about Reed-Eye Fry. I seem to be having some success. Oh no, this is Waylon. If I pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry. Um,
I wish
I
Ray
seem,
was here right now. That would
I
be,
know Ray's the Reed-Eye guy,
yeah.
but okay. I seem to have some. I could turn my camera back on too. Sorry,
One
guys.
of the things that happens with seahorse fry, and in fact, I've got a scientific paper, there was some extensive research done, and they found that fry that are raised on brine shrimp, basically because it's a freshwater species or brackish water species, they lack the lipid profile. They have the protein, but saltwater fish don't use proteins. They use EPA and DHA as part of their growth, which is totally lacking in brine shrimp. And they found that seahorses, they actually did a series of experiments trying different enrichments, different feeds to determine. And they found that those fed on brine shrimp alone had the lowest survival rate, had the lowest growth rate, and succumbed before any of the others. With Reed-Eye, your best bet, quite frankly, because of the size and their nutritional value, they're like combs. They are pelagic species for up to a couple of weeks after birth. They're burning a lot,
Right.
a lot of energy. They're not hitching. Excuse me. Your best bet, in my opinion, would be to pick up some Cyclops panamensis. Reed Mariculture markets them as their apex pods. They're very, very easy to propagate in large numbers. They don't have to be enriched. They are nutritious. They are a saltwater species. And I had a huge success with my Combs fry once I started on the A. panamensis pods. And You can grow them in huge numbers. They are not cannibalistic or anything like that. And the adults, the largest adults are about the same size. Well, they're coming in about 670 microns. The newborns are typically around 80 microns in size. So they work very well for the very small pelagic species of seahorses. And I suspect that's the first thing that's going on, where you're getting them to a few weeks and then you're losing them. There you go. Yeah, exactly.
So check those out. And I would
He's
absolutely.
in New Zealand, so he has trouble getting live pods.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
Yeah. I was going to say too, at 4 weeks, that's usually the time when I was breeding, and I'm no expert. Cheryl's much better at this than I am, but 4 weeks is when I would start converting them to frozen for that exact reason. They weren't reed-eye, they were rectus, just to be clear. But
reed-eye aren't going to be big enough at 4 weeks, probably.
Okay, gotcha. So it's just a matter of finding how to get the nutrition to them, huh? What are there any enrichments that you suggest, Cheryl, like that you could use on the BBS or on the Artemia to make them?
I'm
right
always
profile?
experimenting with enrichments. First,
Okay.
The first problem is even newly hatched baby brine shrimp, in many instances, are going to be too large for reed-eye fry to consume. Assuming that you can enrich them. I still have some of Dan's original enrichment here.
Mm-hmm.
Todd sells some enrichment. Also, Alicia, Seahorse Savvy, has enrichment for baby brine shrimp. But you're going to have to enrich them. What you need to do is when they're first born, when they're newly hatched, brine shrimp don't have a mouth. So you need to wait technically about 24 hours. Enrich them for 12 hours. The biggest problem with enrichment is you're risking if you try to enrich them all at once, you're going to end up with bacterial problems. What I do is I take out what I need to feed for a day, enrich them, and then each day before I feed them, they go through a 5-minute 3% hydrogen peroxide bath prior to being fed to the nursery system. And that's to ensure that I'm not transferring any bacteria, which brine shrimp are notorious for.
Yeah, I was going to say that might be part of it too. If the hatchery's not clean.
He says he has rotifers.
Yep. The problem with rotifers, and I worked with them when I was working with engines, is one, they spin in that's why they're called rotifers. They spin in a circular motion. And most predators, seahorses are predators, have what's called a search image. And they're looking for a specific type of movement to target it. And in many instances, I saw that the engines fry really did not like the rotifers. They wouldn't take them. They're easy to propagate. I mean, I had enough rotifers to feed an army, but the seahorses were not impressed with them, quite frankly.
Gotcha. Yeah, that being in New Zealand. Oh gosh. Oh man.
If you're in New Zealand, I would think I wish Chris was on here or somebody, because they've got to have sources for Copepods.
I will message Chris right now.
It's Chiller Blue for the Big Bang, and he's up to his eyeballs right now.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I saw Maria was talking about getting a 60-gallon column tank, and I'm thinking column tanks really aren't that great for seahorses. I don't think. I know mine. They like to swim longer than more up and down. So rectangular actually is a lot better for seahorses.
Well, the thing is, you've got to, when you're doing this, you've got to look at size of the food, their movement, is the seahorse going to accept them, and their nutritional value. And with the Apanamensis pods, because they are saltwater species, they have adequate EPA and DHA to get past the early mortality we commonly see when brine shrimp are being fed.
Gotcha. I know you guys are talking about two different things now, but it's okay. It's okay. It's open chat. We're chatting about all of it, but I hope that I'm going to reach out to Chris for you, Waylon, and ask him maybe if he could come in a future week, or at least see if he has any suggestions, because he might have some resources
There's
in
got
your
to
area.
be a way to get pods there. It's like I've been dealing with Reed for 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm real
Well,
familiar with them, but
and I think they ship internationally. I really think they
I
might.
don't know if they ship internationally or not.
Well, check with. In fact, I'll reach out to Chad too, see if he can.
Yeah,
See
I'll
if he
get with
knows anything.
Chad on that.
Yeah. And the only other thing I would say to Waylon, am I saying your name right? I hope I am. I'm sorry if I'm not. But is that the biggest problem, the biggest two problems with Fry, and they weren't reed eyes, so you have a harder time than I ever had. But the biggest two problems I had with Fry is, number one, weaning them soon enough. And Cheryl already said 4 weeks is too young for a reed eye, but I just had a lot of trouble getting them onto frozen foods. And the other thing was, and Dan helped me with this, and I realized that the reason I had such lack of success at first, it was my hatchery. It really was. It was my hatchery, and the fact that I had them in too small of a tank. Like I had the fry, too many fry in a smaller tank, and then I know you. I think I read you have the tub, which is amazing because that's the right way to do it for sure. But I would just say, take a look at your hatchery and make sure like you're cleaning it in between each time, really cleaning it. Mine was like a
I
2 liter
bleach
bottle
mine.
inverted.
I
So,
bleach mine between each use.
and the other thing is, real quick, I know we have to go back to Laura's question. I know you guys have a couple other questions, but Cheryl, can you describe in a little bit more detail? I know Dan is going to talk about this on one of the Ask Seahorse Source episodes, but in detail about peroxide. But can you just say, you kind of mentioned it, but a lot of people don't know or do that. When you have Artemia, you said you pull out the amount that you are going to feed for the day, then you enrich them, and you don't enrich the full hatchery because that makes it really easy for bacteria to get crazy. You just do the amount that you're going to feed for the day. And then can you explain like the 3-minute peroxide thing or whatever?
Well, what I do is I pull them out, put them in a cup of clean salt water, and the other half is 3% hydrogen peroxide. And they sit in that for a minimum of 5 minutes. Because the whole point of this is to kill off any bacteria that they may have accumulated either in the hatchery or in the grow out tank, because they are dirty little buggers.
Right. So you said 50% fresh salt water, 50% peroxide, and then you said a minimum of how long?
A minimum of 5 minutes, and I do that at each individual feeding. It's not something I do once. They come out.
You do it every
What
time.
I'm feeding at that moment is going to get put through the hydrogen peroxide. Quite frankly, you can put them into full hydrogen peroxide. It won't kill them. They're really tough little boogers.
Yeah, because I use 40 volume peroxide hair developer.
Yeah.
And I use 60 milliliters for 2 liters, or is it 1 liter, a measuring cup of water.
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm having her explain this, and there's no airline in there, right, Cheryl? They're just sitting in a cup. You don't have to worry about anything. And the reason I'm saying that is because these are the tips that helped me become successful with breeding at all. Is when I learned the trick about keeping the hatchery really clean, using peroxide right before you feed, and then a bigger tub, which you already have going on. But it always comes back to the foods.
What I do is, when they're still in the hatching cone after they're hatched, I dump in a bunch of hydrogen peroxide, because it does two things. One, it helps clean them up to start with. And two, anything that isn't hatched, all the shells and stuff, float to the top. And I just cover the hatching cone, except for the very bottom, with a towel. And so all the live brine shrimp collect at the bottom, and all the junk floats to the top. So, yeah, it just.
But you can't use peroxide on like Copepods or anything, right? It's only for Artemia.
You'd probably kill them, because the pH change would. I've never had a problem with any of my Copepod cultures. I'm trying to think back. At one
I
time,
know
I think I
Dan
did
says
experiment
not
with it.
to. He
Yeah, I
says it
think
can
Dan said
kill
not to. Yeah, the reason I was asking that is because I'm sorry I'm slacking on these questions, guys. I will get to them all, I promise. But Waylon said something about maybe collecting copepods from his reef tank, and wouldn't that be? And I'm asking because I don't know, but wouldn't that be even more dangerous, Cheryl? Because a reef tank has, like that. We don't want to mix seahorses in a
Okay.
reef tank. Okay.
I worked one just the other day. I don't know where they got the rock, but they pulled it. I think they pulled it. It said they pulled it out of an existing tank. And they wanted to know what all these little things were everywhere in their nursery. They were
Mm.
hydroids.
Oh, right. Yep. So either the danger is anything can come with something from the reef tank to the fry tank. So I personally wouldn't do that, but keep us updated and let us know because read-eye are difficult because so if you get, if you figure this out, definitely come back and share. Thumbs up. I hope what
Any
we
of the
have discussed
pelagic,
helped.
any of the species that produce the pelagic fry are a lot more difficult. And then when you get into something like engines that throw out over 1,000 at a time, and that's why I finally stopped working with engines. Is I came to the realization they needed a large public aquarium because it was somebody, a hobbyist like myself. I couldn't keep up with them.
Right.
I literally could not keep up with them. And
Well, I
reader
hope.
some big broods.
Yes. And that could be it too. Like make sure you're not overstocking the fry tub because that was like I'm just telling you my failures. My failures was overstocking, hatchery, and not knowing about the peroxide. So hopefully those three things will help you out. I know Dan has talked about before that, he would rather take, only keep half of a batch and do really well with a half of a batch instead of overcrowding the tank and trying to keep them all because then you lose them all. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
those would be my 3 tips. And if you ever want to jump in and chat with us, I can give you the link. But maybe we'll wait until Dan's here next week because he's really great. Cheryl's awesome at answering these questions.
Dan's been my mentor for over 15
Yeah.
years. So if we sound
Right.
a lot alike, there's a reason.
Right, exactly. But yeah, so keep us. And this is not very good transition, but I'm going to use it anyways because we've got to get Laura's question. She asked hours ago or an hour ago. Laura wanted to know if you can keep coral and macroalgae in the same tank, and the reason she was asking is because of lighting. So Holly, haven't you done that?
What was that?
Haven't you kept coral and macro in the same tank?
Not really, because I don't keep coral.
Okay.
I have like one little piece of GSP, and I had macro before that, but I took most of the macro out of that tank before I got the GSP,
Remember,
and
yeah, not
it
all macro
wasn't.
is the same. Not all of it's
No.
like calupra
Yeah, I
that
didn't
takes
have
over
pretty
everything.
macro.
Yeah.
Right. And I can say that I personally, and like Holly's describing, your question was great because it does depend on the kind of coral you're talking about. If you're talking about SPS and you have that intense lighting, the macro is probably, if it's like a caulerpa, it will thrive and it'll take over. You wouldn't want to mix caulerpa in with, and I wouldn't put it in a display tank, period. But anyways, if you have the prettier macros, even then, if you're talking SPS and intense light, I probably wouldn't try. I had a mixed here. Let me just tell the story. Just quit rambling. I had a mixed reef, right? That had everything from SPS that I kept up high to LPS flowing around everywhere to Welso brain corals and what am I? I can't even think of the names now. I had a clam. I had everything all over this tank, right? And I had an SP reef light over it. And what I did is I put the macros in sump. And I had a sump that was like actually really pretty, right? And that's where I fell in love with macros is because of the reef tank. And I
And
was keeping.
tell you what happens is I call it Cheetos ketomorpha. Decide to
No, I'm getting there. I'm
plug up
getting
your
there.
baffles and
Hang
start
on.
to overflow the
Yes,
tank.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So the mistake that I think that I made is I was using the macros in the sump as a reverse light cycle. I have a video. I'll link a video that I can explain it better instead of sitting here rambling. But basically, it benefits the tank in so many ways. However, what Cheryl was just describing happened to me is at some point I wasn't harvesting the macros from the sump or from the refugium quickly enough, and they went over the baffle. They grew over the baffle, got into the pump, went up into the tank, just little spores of it, whatever, and it literally just covered my tank. So not only would it grow and do well with even SPS, but it overtook everything. It was a crazy disaster. So the first thing I would say is be careful about the species of macros that you choose.
Yeah.
I think I have another video where I describe my Seahorse tank, where I had in my 65, I had Gorgonians. I didn't have any SPS, but the Gorgonians needed a reef light. And so I did have a reef light on the tank, and I had the refugium type macros in the refugium. And then I had pretty macros like Blue Scroll and I can't name them off the top of my head. Like I said, I will link the video, but I had macros in both the sump and in the tank, but I made sure to get macros that would not outgrow the Gorgonians or any other coral. So get with me on the side if you want, or if you have specific. Oh, I think you're answering now. Mushrooms, Recordia. Yes, you can definitely keep those with macros. But what I want to hear is what kind of macros you intend to get. Please stay away from Clerpa. Please. I know some people like it, but it just takes over your tank. It grows so fast and will grow in any light. And it sounds great, but it's not because it's too much. So name off the okay, and Francis said macro plus coral usually results in algae issues due to the lighting requirements and organic exports in a display tank. Well, giving that a fair thumbs up, you're not wrong. And that's why I said the way I always like to do it, especially in a reef tank, is to put the macros in the sump. Do a refugium, make it pretty down there. You can still take pictures. It's still beautiful. But there are macros you can keep in a tank. Just if you name them off, I'll tell you what I think, because certain ones can and certain ones can't, because certain ones belong in the sump and certain wouldn't survive in a sump, in a refugium, because they grow more slowly. They just wouldn't. It depends on if you're trying to get rid of algae by keeping macros in the sump. If you want to do a display tank with coral and macros, you got to pick certain ones. So yeah, get with me on the site anytime and let me know what macros you're looking at, and I will definitely give you my opinion. And I'm always right. So, all right, I'm done rambling. No, but any other thoughts, ladies, on that? I know that's not much of an answer, but it just depends on the macro you choose.
Yeah, I don't really keep either, so I don't really have much to say on that. I haven't really done much in those.
I'm at the point anymore where my tanks are bare bottom.
Yeah.
There's, the only thing that goes in them is in the sump is some dry rock and different types of filter media. In the main tank itself, about 95% of what's in there are artificial hitches and seahorses.
Right.
And I do keep a few snails, which really don't necessarily like the bare bottoms. But for me, I can go in, I can completely clean the bottom of a tank in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know, Laura, are you even talking about a seahorse tank? I didn't think you were. If you're talking about seahorses, I wouldn't have seahorses with like SPS anyways.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? If you can get away with like mushrooms and stuff, but
mushrooms, Recordia, Singularia, Nepthia. There's a lot of softies that you can go with that are not going to hurt seahorses. Your biggest problem is if the seahorses keep hitching to them. People have reported like tissue damage on gorgs and stuff like that.
And I never saw that. My seahorses hitched on the gorgs all the time, and they were wonderful. But go ahead.
But the thing is, you got to remember too, seahorses really are not real big on bright light, and most corals require some decent light.
Yeah, but see, I agree with what you're saying, Cheryl, of course. But for instance, she's talking about gorgonians, mushrooms, things like that. Yes, you absolutely can. The lighting that they require, it won't be.
Yeah.
Yes, you could keep macros in the tank. I still would suggest choosing macros carefully so they don't overgrow on all the stuff and take over the tank. But yeah, we could really dive deep into this, and but I will link those videos that talk about why I put the macros in the sump and which macros I put in the tank. Because, sorry, go ahead, Cheryl.
Cheetos.
What?
No Cheetos.
No
Keto
Cheetos,
more.
right? Exactly. And let's see, we have so many different questions, Laura. I hope that helped a little bit. But what you're trying to do, yes, you can do. Just be careful not to get some outgrowing crazy. I swear, I'm not going to ramble. Keep rambling. This last thing I'm going to say. I personally literally call them different names. Like there is a category of macroalgae that are refugium algae, period. They would be a nuisance algae in your tank. So you only keep them in the refugium to outcompete nuisance algae in the tank, right? But there are pretty ones that don't grow as fast and, don't take out and spread that you can keep in the tank with them. So I'll try to come up with a list and have it for you next week.
If you keep the light off, callooper doesn't grow as fast.
Yeah. And your thing about highlighting in a seahorse tank, you're not wrong there either, Cheryl. You're right. But like in my 65, the seahorses were fabulous. And I had, gorgonians and a reef light and everything. I think it depends a lot on what you're trying to do. If you're not trying to breed, it's a different situation. You know what I mean?
You have to understand, my lighting on my tanks are reef breeder photons.
Yeah.
I mean, they will do SPS and the whole 9 yards. But I'll tell you, I just keep them toned down and don't get a lot of algae. They don't give me any problems. And they've been running for several years without any issues. Good, high quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, if there's nothing else, I know that I missed a bunch of questions, you guys. I got to go back and try to find them now. Sorry. We've covered a lot tonight. Let's see.
New seahorses through seahorses.
Oh, and what really quickly, what Maria, about what Holly was saying about the column tank. I don't. There used to be a recommendation that seahorses needed tall tanks. That's been proven untrue completely. My seahorses are breeding in a 15 and a half, 16-inch high tank. So you don't need a tall tank. And the reason I would stay away from like a column is because cleaning it, reaching the bottom, if you're talking about a tall circular tank, ooh, new,
Well, you can't get good circulation down lower in the tank, which is another issue. So you get a lot more detritus buildup.
Oh my gosh. Dan's here.
Here's Dan.
Dan, I was going to call you later and ask you if you were still on for next week, but we can talk about that later. How are you?
Mean, ornery, nasty.
Love it. Real quick, I know I'm jumping back and forth now, but Dan, there was a question earlier. Waylon is trying to raise a reed-eye fry in New Zealand, and at 4 weeks, he's losing them.
Yep.
And go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Go ahead and finish.
Oh no, the only finish was the only thing I could recommend, because I've never raised reed-eye, were your tips that you helped me with in the past, keeping the hatchery clean, using peroxide, which Cheryl covered on the brine shrimp. And then because I raised Erectus, I said, well, that's about the time you should be weaning them onto, a more qualified food. But Cheryl said they're not big enough at that point. So what's your input?
My first question is, what food are they starting off with as first food?
Oh boy, hang on. He has Rotifers. I don't think he started off with those though. I think he started off with BBS.
Mm-hmm.
Waylon, if you're still out there, what food did you start off with? We got Dan.
The first
Cheryl
thing
gave
is,
you good tips.
the very first thing is, I would start with Copepods for the first 2 weeks.
He can't get them. He's in New Zealand.
You can't get any Copepods?
Or do you have a suggestion on where?
He needs to do some research and find out where he can get them.
Yeah.
If you can't get Copepods, then I would probably go to Rotifers, but I don't. My best success with pelagic fry with Rotifers was 50%. My best success with using plankton, which, basically Copepods, was up above 90%. So, we busted our tail with pelagic fry doing baby brine shrimp. We've tried newly hatched. We've tried enriched. Given their size, the Artemia is going to be really too big for them. And Rotifers rotifers really don't have much nutrition. It's just whatever you enrich them with. And they're also prone to developing bacteria and um, parasites within the culture. So, what I find is the biggest problem with at 4 weeks typically is it ends up being bacteria in the gut that does them in. And it's, to prevent that, you really got to have good food, get them strong, and you got to be really anal with the food being clean and the tank being clean. And then the next hurdle is getting them from uh, live foods to frozen foods. And a lot of times people will get them to that point and then they'll drop off once they start the frozen food. So, these guys are tricky. There's only a handful of people globally that are really successful with this species.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he did say he is starting off with baby brine shrimp. Could that be part of it? He just really needs to find something smaller.
He really does if he wants to succeed. Now, it can be done with baby brine shrimp, but your numbers are going to be very low.
Gotcha.
Well, he's saying copepods are hard to import because of biosecurity reasons.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
there should be some down there.
That's
Right.
what I was saying. Yeah.
I'm gonna
exactly.
ask Chad and also sorry, I'm trying to read and do. I can't walk and talk at the same time.
Oh,
But yeah, we're gonna reach out to
amphipods.
Chris.
He's asking about amphipods. Would amphipods work?
Could
Too big.
potentially work if you would harvest them as soon as they're born, when they're still very, very small, because they are definitely smaller around, at least the Gramaras are, than newly hatched baby brine shrimp. And they are a marine species, so they're going to have the EPA and DHA that the fry need.
And now I'm literally asking Chris.
If he was close enough to the water, I would
on-
really consider collecting plankton.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, trying to do too many things at once. That was another question right here. Let me put it up for us. It's not exactly the same, but Francis asked, should owners collect shrimps from tide pools or should they be wary of potential issues? Isn't there potential issues even collecting plankton and et cetera? Dan?
There's always a potential issue, but the benefits trump the potential issues. For the roughly 10 years that I was collecting plankton, twice I saw parasitic copepods. And that was, me collecting almost 7 days a week for that time frame. And, there's a potential of picking up bad stuff. But generally speaking, when you collect fresh live stuff and feed it to your fish, very rarely is that going to present a problem. You have a bigger problem when other people collect the live stuff and hold it in tanks, and you've got high density and small areas where bacteria proliferate. But generally speaking, when you're collecting it fresh out of the wild, I'm usually not that concerned about it. I would go through a process of deworming later on, just in case, but that's really all I really worry about.
Would you go through the 9 weeks, Dan, on deworming?
No, what I typically did was somewhere after I got them off the plankton and onto Artemia, I would start dosing with fenbendazole in the tank. And that was for twofold reason. The first reason, of course, was dealing with hydroids, but the second reason was in case there was any worms to go ahead and hit them with that. Okay. And the primary worms that we're concerned about are going to be the ones that fenbendazole treats.
Nice. And along with what you were saying, I'm just asking all the same questions just to get your input, and I will get to the other questions, guys, I promise. But you would not suggest someone collecting copepods from the reef tank, though, right? Because of what you just described.
Well, if they've got them, you can do it, but you're not going to have near enough to be of any significant benefit.
Gotcha. What if he could collect the copepods and breed them?
Culture them.
Well, that would be fine. But remember this, I've sat there and clocked these guys eating 1 to 2 food items per minute. Right. So if you've got 500 fry, multiply that by just 1 a minute. That means you need 500 copepods a minute, and now put a light schedule on for 24 hours and the numbers are staggering.
Yeah. Hey, Aquachar. Hey, Chimp. Just wanted to say hey real quick. One other thing before I jump to the other questions, Dan, is Holly asked when we first started, Thing 2 has been treated with, first, I'm just going to sum it up quickly. Furon 2 first, then switched because she couldn't get Furon 2 to triple sulfa. And what else, Holly?
Oh, Canaplex and
Canaplex.
Sulfaplex were the ones I was using.
Yeah. And so anyways, he's much better. She's also been using Allison on the wound, and then Debride, this new product that Heather told us about that we'll talk later about, but it's basically like a Band-Aid for seahorses. It just covers it. And what does it do to the tissue, Cheryl? Go ahead.
What it does is basically it debrides necrotic tissue. It also has antibiotic properties, and appears, based on what I'm seeing in the seahorse's response, it's in a gel form, and it's kind of like an oil gel, and it adheres to the lesions, and I'm amazed at how well this stuff worked. It was actually developed for COE.
Yeah, and we're gonna try to get the woman from the business on the show. I've reached out to her, and Holly's in touch with her too. We're gonna try to get her to come in and talk more about it. But actually, the question go ahead.
Well, if you look at wounds and wound care, debridement is often done with things like pilonidal cysts and stuff, where they pack the wound, they pull the packing out, and basically they're pulling all the dead tissue out with it.
Yep.
I say all of it, some dead tissue with it. And I can see where that would be a benefit. In fact, I could see where that be a much bigger benefit than the bio bandage.
Yep.
Holly,
absolutely.
have you tried, did you look into molecular hydrogen at all?
I haven't. Yeah, I haven't done that.
I've been talking with somebody else who contacted me after hearing me mention it, and this person is actively using it with testing, and preliminary results are real good.
Awesome.
Nice.
And it looks, Francis, I'm going to let you in. It looks like Francis is going to join us. We're just having a party tonight. But just to get that question out, Dan, the question was, since he's doing Thing 2 is doing so much better, should she stop the medication, or how long should she? How should she know?
Not
to stop
the
the medication?
topical, but the Sulfaplex
Yes.
and the Canaplex specifically.
But basically, Dan, she's been treating them now for over a month, probably going on 2 months with antibiotics.
You know, I have mixed feelings on this, and my gut tells me to continue with it, because my fear is that if you stop, it may take back off again. And until we get
question,
well,
my
let
question,
him finish. Hang on, let him finish.
My big fear is that we don't have it completely killed off, and if it takes hold again, then I'm afraid the antibiotics are not going to be effective.
Well, what I was thinking in terms of is possibly switching to Metro, and in other words, changing antibiotics.
Right. Well, Metro is only going to do.
That's parasitic.
Yeah, it's really more for anaerobic
bacteria.
Yeah, I just don't see it being very effective.
Okay. That's why I wanted to ask you.
My other thought is if this combination seems to be working, I don't want to change it while it's working.
So just
but how do you know when you stop?
Well, when it looks like the infection is gone, then I would stop. But at this point, I'm not convinced that the infection is gone.
Wait till it's
we're seeing
gone.
progression where it appears to be getting better, but with the pictures that I've seen, I don't think it's, I wouldn't call it completely gone and out of the woods yet.
This is why we love you, Dan, and we're so glad you jumped in, because both Cheryl and I were like, well, it's been 3 months back off. so thank goodness you jumped in. Francis, I see you. I'm going to welcome you. I'm going to welcome you in just 1 second. Go ahead, Holly.
I'm listening. No worries.
Okay.
All right. So I was going to find a picture of when
the torso is looking very good.
Medicine on, so you can see like because I'm noticing like the upper part of his body, that it's just about healed, and I've noticed it's not hardly white anymore.
That's
a very
good.
Tiny speck of white. So on the tail though is still very white. So will the tail, like, here we go. So will the tail, like, eventually see how white it is? I'm trying to
Yep.
get it to where it's in the.
That
Okay.
that's my
Will
concern right now.
will
Yep.
when
Yeah,
it's
I've seen the
healed,
pictures online.
will it turn back to brown? Is that what I'm watching for? Will it be completely brown again
Well,
after he's done?
well, generally speaking, what happens with the tail when you have an infection and it can't heal back, you end up losing that part of the tail.
That's what I've
Now,
been
if that
telling
was
her.
the case, I would expect to see necrosis lower than the wound itself. But since the rest of the tail below there looks good, I would expect that to potentially be capable of healing up.
Okay, so just wait till he's either lost the tail and it goes back to brown, or all of it goes back to brown. That's kind of how I'll know.
Well, the wound is decreasing on the tail compared to what it was over a month
Yeah.
ago. It's
Yeah,
just we've always said the reduced blood supply in the tail makes healing much slower, and we know tail healing is notoriously
yeah, it
slow.
can be very slow to heal. And the other thing is it can be very quick and very easy for it to bounce back.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I'm just I don't like keeping an animal on antibiotics as long as we have and continuing, but I think that it's a mistake to stop at this point because you've made headway, and I'm really afraid that if you stop, it takes hold again, and there's no stopping it at that point.
Gotcha.
Well, I'm glad you jumped in and said that, Dan, because I was thinking, concern about resistance and all that, but
If this had been a case where she treated it for 7 days and it was looking better and she was approaching the 10 days and said, I might have a different opinion, but
right.
this has been a long battle.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. I'm saying you're right.
Dan, my first comment on this was, if this was a dog or anything else, I would have gone in, cut out all the necrotic tissue, packed it, and wrapped it. But we can't do that with a seahorse.
Right.
And that's one of the things that makes treatment so difficult sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. And you run other risk by doing that as well. Um, I would be really curious to see what would happen if you were to get some hydrogen tablets and do 2 or 3 of those a day in the tank. I think you would see some rapid improvement if you did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
I hope
like
you'll.
to do that. It's kind of a matter of paydays coming along.
Right,
It's
They're
not
kind
cheap.
of an expensive
They're,
investment for me
yeah,
right now.
they're not cheap. And a little bit more research I've been doing. The ideal way to do it is to have a machine that bubbles in the tank, but um,
It's expensive.
that's just not practical from a cost standpoint for the average user. But they
Mhm.
make
Still,
them commercially for aquaculture systems.
yeah, it might be
But yeah,
beneficial
I have
to
them written down to try. I did write them down, but
yeah,
haven't
and
been in a position to invest in those yet, I'll say.
well, I hope Dan, that you will share what the other person you're working with, how their success is going, and all of that in the future, because it might be the next thing, and maybe they'll be cheaper in the future or something, or at least help bigger breeders, or whatever. I don't know.
Well,
Just
there's a lot to be learned, and I really wish I had the stuff set up where I could run some testing with it, but unfortunately, I don't have the setups to do it.
yeah, but you can learn through
So
other people. Okay,
here's a
Holly, hurry, because
picture of
Francis is waiting.
him. So here's a picture of him when he came out of the water, when he was looking up. But you can see the debride on him and how well it sticks. It's like a mucus
Yeah.
consistency, so it sticks really well on him.
Gotcha.
Go for it.
Okay, so real quick, I know we have questions I haven't gotten to, guys. I'm trying. But Francis, thank you for joining us. So you were busy dealing with an acrylic tank.
Yes, I got a donated acrylic tank, about a 40-gallon, about a week ago. But you know me, because I've got a lot of anxiety scratching the glass or acrylic walls, I took a couple hours just really deep cleaning it before setting it up. As this was going to be the new Hystrix habitat that I have. Or sorry,
Nice.
Subelongatus, not Hystrix. My apologies. So I've been doing that, and then with the tiger tail male, he's gone out of the woods. He's more active, more cognitively aware. He's been
Good.
eating, and he actually finalized his color change. So I don't
That
know.
was my next question.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so tiger tails can change colors, and this male was dark for like the longest time, and since Monday, he turned almost all white with the black speckles on, and he's been more active since then in eating.
Good.
So,
Good.
um,
So he's
Nice.
coming
although
around.
the
Or she.
medication was a little different this time around, so that was something I wanted to kind of ask. And to just kind of explain in detail, I was doing all sorts of medications. As Cheryl knows and Kelly knows, we initially thought it was a ciliate issue when I first got these guys. So it was a pair, boy and girl, and they were having itchiness with repeated freshwater depths once every other week. It wasn't really doing much since formalin and colloquial phosphate is very hard to come by unless you have a prescription. But for any other new seahorse caretakers out there, if you have a vet that you have a good relationship with, more than likely they'll be able to help you out. That's what happened with me after calling 5 to 10 different clinics with the seahorse vet as well, Dr. Cecil. I eventually had to go to one of the more local nonprofit orgs that's mainly meant for dogs and cats and the normal pets. And the doctor there actually worked with me to be in getting the equipment, the syringes and feeding tube to at least try to get him more energetic because he was losing a lot of nutrition. He hadn't eaten in about 5 days at that point straight. And after that, I do have to admit, feed tubing was really scary at first, especially because these seahorses are kind of small, a lot smaller than the normal ones that you would see at the store, like the erectus species. So after first couple of tries of trying to feed tubing it, he eventually got the hang of it. So I didn't have to feed tube him after the second day of the treatment. He was able to start sneaking off the food when it was offering right in his mouth. And that's what I've been doing. Now, in terms of the medications, I was using throughout this entire time Paragard, and this is something I wanted to mention. Cheryl, your advice was wonderful. The whole slow acclimation, 25%, 50%, 75. I think that's what definitely helped ensure my seahorses would live a lot longer versus just dumping the full dosage into the tank. Seahorses are more sensitive, and I've been realizing throughout my care of them that any small fluctuation, they'll get a little bit upset with me.
Well, yeah.
So by doing the same formula, same ratio for all new medications I was going to do. So I've been using Metroplex and Sulfaplex
Yeah.
on
You
top of.
can
What's
probably
that?
get away with doing some of the other stuff at
Yeah.
normal dosage right away. But
Oh,
I
okay.
found that dosing for urodema, if you hit them with 100% the first day, they're
Mm,
dead.
it's too much of a overload on their immune
Yeah.
system. I agree.
It's an
It's a
internal
die
process.
that does it.
It's what?
The die off. You end up with toxins being released as the
Oh.
things die off.
Exactly.
And that's something to
Exactly.
keep in mind. And I still follow the 25, 50%, 75% because even Dr. Cecil, the one who is specialized with seahorses, mentioned that by taking it slowly with the rationale the toxins die off release, that it may be a lot better for seahorses, even though research has shown full dosage just to be safe. So I followed along with his directions, along with Dr. Garvey, who is the vet from the Humane Society, not Humane Society, the Helen Woodward's Animal Companion Hospital Center. And it's been going great so far. And the super elongated, I've been doing a very similar quarantine medical treatment on them just to be safe. And that's a whole nother story that I can explain a little later today.
So I'm just so glad that the combs are doing so much
No,
better.
and I can
That's
show a video
Yeah.
real quick of the tiger tail male to show how much he's improved. So give me one moment as I can
yeah.
share the screen.
It's down at the bottom. Should
Yeah,
be.
Dan, was an extremely small young pair of combs. And to this day, I'm not sure where they really came from. They could
Yeah.
have come from ORA, but I even question that.
We're questioning that because this
Yeah.
store that I got. So this store is probably one of the more reputable saltwater stores in San Diego, and this has been the start of my journey. I meant to get Erectus, that's what they were labeled as, and then as Cheryl knew, I noticed some differences, and I couldn't figure it out what the seahorses were or their normal behavior. So keep in mind, do your research before buying anything right off the bat, because I did not know that the care for Erectus was vastly different than the Comus species.
Mhm. Yep.
I'm
Okay,
The
so
difference is you went after it with everything you had when you knew you had a problem, and you weren't going to
yes,
stop until you found a way to take care of it.
bravo to you and Cheryl. So
upset.
real quick, guys, I'm trying to share. When you screen share, I have to share it. So I'm trying
Okay,
to
so
share
I
it,
sent you the
but
video already, I think.
it's blank.
I
If you
sent
want,
you the video,
oh,
Kelly,
you
on
sent it to me.
Messenger.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it says that there's like a technical issue with my laptop.
Okay,
Sorry,
sorry.
I'm a grad student.
Hey, Francis, have you decided whether those were subs or Hystrix?
So I was able to get in contact with an Australian wholesale distributor because something that I kind of do is I try to make sure, especially with my experiences, that all animals that I receive or I get come from trusted sources after the aquatic store mishap that I had. And so when the vendor told me that he had seahorses, he was very vague at first. And I asked specifically what species they were because it looked vastly different than the name that he gave, which was a long-nosed seahorse. I could see that because the noses were very long, but you know how some other characteristics tend to define a seahorse species? That definitely wasn't this one because I saw lots of characteristics that didn't match. Did a lot of conversing back and forth with the vendor, trying to figure out who the distributor was, the hobbyist who was selling them, and it came out as captive bred, supposedly. And I say supposedly because I feel like most stores would say captive bred just to sell their animals. And when I went to go pick them up, he originally said he had like a whole shipment of them, but the day of pickup, he only had two, and apparently he had to go directly to the wholesaler to pick up those two. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of iffy, but I did again because I tend to do a lot of research and I connect with a lot of people. The person, the vendor who was selling it was supposed to be very reputable as well.
Didn't they say that they were supposed to be combs?
Yeah. Oh no, not this
Or
one.
what
That's
was it?
the aquatic where that was the initial pair. I'm talking about the subalongatus pair. That I
Right.
had.
Yeah, but they told you that they were something else completely
Yeah,
different.
so they told me it was a long-nosed seahorse. And then I did my research because I'm like, that can't be it. They're too spiky looking. So I came onto this channel to kind of discuss, the ethical rationales as well as the legal reasons, whether or not this would be an acceptable buy, and how consumers can take the initiative to also watch and to do their own research to ensure that the animals they're getting aren't coming in sick or wild caught, because chances are they won't acclimate well, they won't feed well, and they'll won't last long in general. So because of that, and because when I got these guys, they were at a very steep discount, I brought them home and I started right away with their quarantine medical treatment after conferring with Cheryl about it. Since during that time I was already having issues with the comas, and since then, and since talking to the specialists and doctors and vets, as well as going to the Scripps Aquarium at the Birch Institute in San Diego, I believe I've been able to solidify what species they were. And I got in contact with the distributor in Australia to figure out whether the species I was looking at, doing my research, was the species being sold. Now, the wholesaler distributor confirmed that it was not being sold at their business because there's not been a very big breeding success with these seahorses, and they are currently, I believe, endangered. So they're not collected unless you have a wildlife permit. And
Right.
then on top of that, there is a size limitation or size restriction when they
Yeah.
come in.
Mhm.
So because I did the subsequent research of the Sites 2 permits, making sure that the vendor had it, there was that chance it was wild caught, but they looked okay. So I decided to take the chance to bring them home, especially since I had all of these other contacts that can help me with them every step of the way. I figured their chances might be a lot better compared to someone who just had a brand new setup, saw how pretty they were, and decided to just pick them up because the vendor was saying there were a lot other people interested, but he wanted to ensure that since I had all these people to help me with, that he was more willing to give them to me than having them die at another place. So that's what I have right now. And the
Well, real quick, I wanted to say, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but the video didn't come through. Did you send it to me on Messenger?
yes. Let me try one more time.
Yeah, try one more time. And it's funny because your original question and what you're trying to promote is absolutely amazing. Do your research for sure. But one of the things that we've talked about before is getting caught up in what you just talked about. For
Yeah.
instance, I had a guy come to me specifically and be like, I've got these ribbon ghost fish, and because you're
Oh,
so good with signathids, I want you to get them and instead of somebody else.
yeah.
Well, shoot, the next week he had 4 more. So it was like buying them didn't really help. Which I
Yeah.
understand your point, but it's
But
just
it's the
it's hard.
trap. It's the consumer trap. And that's something that I feel like is a mention. As soon as a new consumer goes into a store and they see, oh, how pretty or exotic it can be, that's where most of the time the consumers are led on by the business person, whether it's, you know, omitted information or twisted information. Generally, their curiosity ends up killing the cat, or in this case, the seahorse.
The
Okay,
difference
really quick,
between-
guys. Let me share his video real quick so we can
Yeah.
look at it and then talk
So
more.
this video is from today. So this shows, I sent a video like last week for a picture,
Hang
but
on, now I gotta hit.
yes.
There we go. He definitely looks better.
Wow.
Oh, what a cutie.
Different.
And he's
Oh,
up
that
instead of doing the
long
face down.
nose. I like that long snout. That's so cute.
Well, that's Combs.
Yeah.
That's very cute.
Francis, who did you talk with at Birch?
Oh, what happened? Did he?
Did we lose him?
Oh, I think I turned
Oh,
him
there he
off.
is.
Sorry, sorry, Francis.
Francis, who did you talk to at Birch?
Oh, Moffat.
Okay. If you get a
Her
chance
name
to
is
talk to
Jenny
Leslie,
Moffat,
she's
Director
about
of
the best there
Animal
is.
Care at the Script Birch Aquarium in San Diego.
The difference between Francis and the average.
Wait, because I don't. Hang on, Cheryl. I know I'm not trying to interrupt everybody. It's
so
just we get to excited, we all talk, and then nobody can hear. What did you say, Deanne? Who
No,
should
I
you
was
talk
just
to?
curious who he talked to up there.
But you
Jen
suggest.
Moffat.
Because, well, I know that Leslie is really good with seahorses, and
Okay.
given a chance, that's who I would talk to.
Let me go get a pen so I can write this down real quick in one moment.
What
And
I
what were
was
you
gonna
saying,
say,
Cheryl?
Kelly, is
Her
the
name is
difference
Lindsay,
between
you said?
most people and Francis is when Francis sees a problem, he doesn't give up until he gets answers. And
Yeah.
he keeps going and going and going until he finds out what he needs to do.
And I do a
And I
lot
respect
of
you for
comparisons.
that.
I do a lot of comparisons as well and a lot of academic research when it comes to the medications. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and anecdotal evidence sometimes may or may not work depending on the situation. So it's always great to do one's research and to get in contact with specialists who have the expertise and knowledge within the medical field.
And if someone can't do as much as Francis has done, you're at least in your testimony to Seahorse Sources group. You know.
Francis,
successful.
Francis, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned, I think it was either last Wine Wednesday or the one before, that the fish vets that you went to was
so
Animal Companion Hospital and Western Aquatic.
Yeah, so
Will they do like Zoom appointments or over the phone, you think?
I'm not sure. I know Dr. Cecil goes in-house for his appointments, but there is a clinic in La Mesa that people can go to. Now, I do know because of the pandemic, there are clinics out there that are doing Zoom appointments. It wouldn't hurt to ask. That's what I did. I asked.
Yeah, because I'm in Northern California. I'm a 12-hour drive from San Diego.
And
So
there's no
there's no way I'm taking my seahorses down there, but I was wondering, like, if I called them, went through email, sent
Yeah,
pictures, that kind of thing, if they'd take
yeah.
me on as a client, perhaps.
So when
Because
I
we
talked
don't have
to
fish
people,
vets up here.
yeah, that's the hard part. That's why it was so necessary for me to do all the research and connections and networking because of the lack of fish vets within the area. And that is something
Yeah.
that's a very good point. And especially with the seahorses. So Dr. Cecil, I don't believe does Zoom appointments per se. His
Mhm.
rationale was that he has to be able to see and to do some tests, I believe, to confirm the
Yeah.
diagnosis. In addition, he also said that there are similar diseases that might show similar symptomology, especially with the seahorses. And since seahorses are more of the sensitive creatures, he doesn't, uh, what's the word? He said due to liability issues, he is unable to
But you said he
confirm.
came to your house?
So I
That's
called him,
I
and
hear
actually
here.
for the last couple of weeks we've been playing phone tag. But
Okay.
I haven't seen him directly as of yet. I'm seeing him at
Okay.
the end of this week due to an appointment that I have scheduled on Friday. And it's because it was my birthday 2 days ago, so I've been kind of busy doing a lot of other
Happy
things.
birthday! Happy birthday!
Happy birthday. Oh, so you're an Aquarius also. So am I.
Yeah, well, I
There
do
we
a lot of
go.
things. And so the Seahorses actually was a project that I started off last year for my applied behavioral analysis master's program, where I'm working to work with students who have disabilities, developmental disabilities for the most part, and getting them to change their behaviors by ways of reinforcement learning and reinforcement
Nice.
processes. So what I've been trying to do is teaching the children how to feed the seahorses and ask them questions, who, what, where, how, in regards to the environment. And this also gives them the ecology lessons in
Yeah.
terms of environmentalism as well as aquatic care. So I do a little bit of that. I do lots of behavioral programs, and I'm almost done with my program actually. So I'm done. I'm graduating this semester, and I'm hoping to get accepted for another master's program for LMFT, for marriage and family therapy counseling. And I'm
Well,
trying
you're
to put
see.
all of my projects all into them so I can share the joy, you
I
know?
was gonna say you're coming. You came to us and others, of course, and did your research. But
Mhm.
you got the seahorse information. Now you're gonna have to come back and help us when we're getting divorces and all this
Oh
other.
my goodness.
But
So
but no, real quick, wait, real quick. I wanted to ask because I was
yeah.
very interested in the doctor thing. So
Yes.
is this vet? Is your appointment at his office, and do you have to
It
actually
gets
bring
his
the
clinic.
seahorse?
And I'm bringing the
Because
seahorse because I
wow,
want
how are you
to.
doing that?
What's that?
How are you? When I had a problem with a seahorse and did the
Uh-huh.
exact same thing you did, I tried to find a vet that would prescribe Diamox because he had
Yeah.
GBD issues. Anyways, the vet wanted me to bring the seahorse, and I was like, "How? How are you bringing?" And then he wanted to keep him
Yeah.
overnight.
Oh,
So
okay. No, they don't do
okay,
overnight. I don't think. Well, I actually didn't ask that question to Dr. Cecil, so don't quote me on that. But in
sure.
terms of packaging the seahorse to bring with me, the clinic is only about a 20-minute drive from my
Oh,
house.
okay.
Very, very close. And it's not an overnight stay. I do believe the vet is going to be doing a blood draw to just make sure if there is any bacterial viral infection that the seahorse might have that we're take into consideration of other potential factors. But from what he said, he's just going to do a small biopsy of the affected area um,
Yes.
as non-invasive as possible. But he also said that depending on his state of health, he may or may not give the medication. The medication is already working, as he doesn't want
Gotcha.
any interactions happening depending on the medications he has in stock that might be effective for his diagnosis. So again, we're meeting on Friday to figure that
Yeah,
out.
well, and Dan, I was just curious about your thoughts. Isn't this like all of us seahorse people's dream to like have a vet that will do a non-invasive biopsy to
And
actually
he has
look at
experience
it and
in
find
this
out?
too.
Well, the challenge is number one, finding a vet that has any knowledge of fish,
Yes.
but you're really lucky when you find somebody who has knowledge of seahorses.
Wow.
And that's,
And
you know, it's pretty rare to find a doctor like that. There's probably not more than 4 or 5 of them in the country.
So
Wow.
one thing I did want to mention that might help other seahorse keepers is one thing
Sure.
that I was told from a lot of colleagues that I have in San Diego who worked at SeaWorld, the Living Coast Center, like my partner, and the Scripps Birch Aquarium is that it doesn't hurt to ask. It never hurts to reach out, as they are the ones who usually have the experienced seakeeper or animal husbandry keepers with the experience for seahorses. Um, and that's what I did. And it might be scary at first to give them a call, but I promise you, the worst they can do is say no, right? And you're still in the same situation. Why not take the chance? I took the chance, and I got the help I needed, you know? And there is that scenario, because I did call 5 other clients that said no, they couldn't do anything. Um, and that puts a damper onto people's feelings. You know, they feel like, what can we do? Well, this channel's great. This channel has all the husbandry keepers, and I believe everyone here, including Dan as well, has done their own studies on seahorse illnesses and health and husbandry care that they are pretty much able to diagnose things from over the net. Because that's the other resource that I highly recommend. And if there's anyone who lives in San Diego who needs help or needs to connect with the seahorse specific experienced professionals, let me know. I'm very fun, easygoing, and nice.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. And
Quick question I had: are those
Yeah.
blue light blockers you're wearing?
no, so I actually got an injury 3 years ago because of my work. So I work with kids with autism, diagnosed with autism, like my dad. And I actually got punched due to a behavior that got exasperated at the public school system. And it dislocated my jaw, and I have a brain injury that prevents me from now translating certain light wavelengths. So without these glasses, I was fainting almost every day and having a lot of nausea. But even though these glasses might look purple to people or they look like normal sunglasses, for me, they're like normal glasses. Everything's clear, like glass.
What are they blocking?
Happy that I got these finally, like about a year and a half ago.
What light are they? What light are they blocking?
They're not, they block certain light color wavelengths. So these ones block out yellow and red, I believe.
Gotcha.
And because the brain changes as it starts to heal, these lenses actually have to be changed almost every year. So next year I might have different lenses than these purplish looking ones.
Gotcha.
So and that's why I'm able to work from home, and that's why I'm able to care for all my seahorses, is because I don't have to go out and work anymore. So that's why I'm doing my grad school studies. And I said, why not? You know, I'm trying to still do my passions. I love my animals and I love my kids. I have come from a large family of 10. I've got 7 siblings. 6 of them are younger. They like to come over, check out, you know, the Seahorse is like a free aquarium, you know?
yeah,
World down over here. So and they all live pretty
absolutely.
around me.
Okay, so real quick before you tell us about I probably am saying it wrong. I say sublungatus. You said it probably properly, but
I think
before
you're
you
wrong. Don't quote me.
right. Well, before you tell us about that, I was just curious
Yeah.
because I know you and Cheryl have had detailed conversations and in the Seahorse Sources group. But what was the medication that worked for you with the
So I've
combs?
been I still stuck with the Paragard and the Metro.
Okay.
And once the Paragard treatment was done by the 15th day, I did the nitrofurantoin green. That is from, I believe, NFP. And after conferring with Cheryl that it was very similar to Furon 2, I decided that it might be my best bet to battle any secondary bacterial infections that were caused by the toxins and from potential parasites that it might have been suffering from. And so I've been doing the nitrofurantoin green since the 15th day, and I did it by the gallon. So I had to do a lot of math calculations. This is why I do a lot of academic research, because I am nervous of overdosing. I'm nervous of medical medicines interacting with one another, because
Right.
I have a very sick dog with hypothyroidism, and he gives me a lot of symptoms that I'm always like anxious about. So with Seahorses especially, I was even more nervous. So by following the mathematical requirements and dosages for the nitrofurantoin green, I did only, I think it's like 0.15 cc translate to about 238 milligrams of nitrofurantoin green. This is where the math comes in. And that's
Right. I'm gonna interrupt you really quickly and say, anybody watching, this is his experience. We're not recommending any medications or anything. You do your own research. Go ahead,
I'm
sir.
mathematical. I like to do dosages by grams and milligrams. So after figuring out the dosage was about 238, that's for a 10 gallon tank. So now I have to figure out how many of that I have to divide out of to start dosing per gallon, to ensure that the tank and whatever water changes I'm doing is still equal to what it was inside of the original tank. And I have to admit, I used a little scale weight that I have, because my partner has a tortoise, and when he first got that, he wanted to measure the tortoise's growth rate. So I've been using a scale to measure out my medications. And
well, we're all lucky. Dan is our scale. I bug him all the time. I'm like, so what's the exact? Anyways, go ahead. Sorry.
It's very hard though to figure out whether or not, because when I first looked at the amount I had to put in, I was like, that's like a speck. It doesn't seem that much. Give it a day to dissolve. Use the air stone. Make sure there's a lot of water movement, because that little speck will tint your water pretty green, pretty yellowish green.
Is that a prescription medication,
No,
Francis, or you can just buy it?
Nitrofurantoin green can be bought at pretty much any aquatic-based fish store. It's sold in San Diego. It's sold at the Aquatic Warehouse that's located in around the Claremont Convoy area. You can probably also get it in San Diego from the Aquatic Fish Depot, which is another store about 10-20 minutes away down south. So those are two stores that I generally frequent for all of my marine fish supplies, and including medications, because they're very quick in getting them in. And I believe Aquatic Warehouse has been very good keeping their medications in stock.
One thing about Francis is he lives down near San Diego.
Yes,
Big difference from where I live.
There's a huge number of fish stores and
many out there.
Huge coastal city, Now, is that a pond medication?
What's that?
Is that a pond medication? Like, would you use it in koi? Because it sounds familiar to me.
I don't believe so. I believe it's like in a white baggie that's a zippy by NFP, nitrofurantoin green. Let me see.
It sounds like it's for different things, but like Metro Blue. It sounds like one of those.
So that's the thing.
Yeah.
So
Which medication is it?
It's the nitrofurantoin green. This one.
Yep. That's.
Yeah.
The difference is the nitrofurantoin green is not considered pharmaceutical as much as the nitrofuran yellow.
Oh. Well, can you say that one more time so that we can all hear one?
Oh, here we go. I found it online. I'll write that one down.
So yeah, this has methylene blue, nitrofurantoin, and sulfathiazole sodium, which I believe is sulfaplex medication. So this was the reason why I decided to use this medication, because I've had very high success with methylene blue baths with my other animals that are all aquatic. And since this contained both the sulfaplex ingredient and methylene blue, I figured it killed two birds with one stone. Any potential parasites that might have survived the Paragard treatment will hopefully be treated with the sulfaplex in here. Now, this is only for the water column. With the Metroplex, I followed Dan's instructions. So Metroplex, there's not a degree of the dosage for the Metroplex. I believe it was just a pinch is what he recommended. I decided to do the little scoops, the mathematical scoops. So again, because the 0.5 cc was a little bit much in my opinion for a full cube of maize shrimp that's been mashed up and Copepods that were also mashed up, I decided to use a tenth of that scoop. So 0.15 cc, a tenth of that is like 20 milligrams worth of this medication. And so after letting it sit in the food, I also added the same amount of focus, even though focus wasn't recommended by Dan. And this is again why I'm saying it though, anecdotal experience. I did a lot of research on thread forums, on reef forums, and focus is a bonding agent for any medication so that they can stick to the foods more easily.
Yep.
My rationale though for why to use focus was the mush was not thick enough for the syringes that I was using. It was too watery. So I had to put in a little bit of the focus powder to make it more like a thicker solution to start feeding the seahorse. And after feeding the Metroplex once every other day, and the reason why I did once every other day is because Metroplex, I believe, has a half-life of 48 hours. So it takes about 48 hours for the medication to be fully digested into the system or to be degraded in the water column, either or. I stuck with that rationale for medicating with Metroplex specifically in order to prevent any overdosing of Metroplex. Now, CChem will say if there's no danger of overdosing, I will still
Right.
on the
Right.
safer side, especially because they're not normal fish, they're seahorses, and seahorses are already very sensitive. So take it easy, take it slow, follow the safe route for the most part. And that's what I did. And at the days that I didn't medicate with the Metroplex in the food, I fed him the normal maize strip to get him back to eating the normal frozen food options.
This
I
is so cool that
wait,
Dan's.
back,
There's a lot
yeah,
of
but
Wait,
let's
wait,
go
wait.
back.
Hang on. Let Dan. Okay, everybody, let Dan
Now,
talk. We gotta
where did you see the information that said metrodiazonol had a 48-hour half-life?
It was on the reef forums. So I used
Okay.
Humble Fish to look
Yeah.
at the different threads, and I used one other reef forum that's pretty popular. I forgot what it's called, but I think it's called Reef to Reef.
Because
Now,
what I'm reading in the medical literature, I'm reading it has a half-life of 8 hours.
Oh, wow.
see, and this is why you do the literature. Don't base it off of threads, right? And goodness, thank you, Dan, for letting me know about that.
Still, what's amazing is that it's worked and that.
Well,
Yeah.
here's the other thing: is that metrodiazonol can be very upsetting to the organism in their digestive system and make them feel like crap. So,
Okay.
some people who just don't tolerate it, when it's used on humans.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
by doing it slow, that may be advantageous because the seahorse doesn't feel as crappy giving it as much.
Yeah.
And on top
He
of that,
probably wouldn't have eaten on the opposite days if you weren't doing it that way. So
yeah. So, and that's the other thing. Even though Metroplex is seen as another like hunger stimulant, I believe, as a medication, for my seahorse, for the tiger tail, even with the Metroplex, he wasn't that interested in eating.
yeah.
Either within the water column, and that's why I had to do the syringe tube feeding. And then there was a scary moment, and this is why be very, very careful, especially with a little seahorse, when you're syringe tubing, because if any food particles are stuck in the tube and you try to just force it out, it's gonna act like a bullet. So
Ooh,
it's shut
ooh,
through, right?
yeah.
I
Ooh.
always make sure to first get out a little at a time, right in front of its snout. I don't shunt the tube into its mouth. There are videos out there that shows how to do that. I wait and I observe to see how strong the seahorse is. If the seahorse is sneaking very strongly, I don't I don't recommend shoving the tubing in. Let the seahorse do its thing. Give the seahorse the chance to try to work it out. Just
Yeah.
give it a little help by offering in front of him.
And if you ever have to do it again, do a video because
Yeah, so
absolutely.
actually, I'm still doing the Metroplex treatment still. So with the
Okay.
Metroplex and the Metroplex, we're still doing. I'll have my partner actually record me tonight or tomorrow. Actually, I already did the Metroplex yesterday. So tomorrow I'm gonna have my partner record it, and I'll send the video over to Kelly so that people can see what I'm doing. And how to
Yeah.
appropriately and safely feed tube a smaller seahorse because the seahorse videos online, they're all very large. Mine is a very
Right.
tiny little one.
These are small seahorses.
Yeah, they're only about 4 inches at the most, fully uncurl, and they go
And
very, very
combs have very narrow bodies. They're
they go very slow. So I will definitely have a video and I'll email
Yay.
it / message it over to Kelly so she can post it next week so that people can see as a medical treatment, as a sort of like a medical guide to help them feed too.
Yeah.
Any other questions about the hippocampus comezes?
No,
Or-
but did you have a question about the acrylic tank?
Oh, I did. So one thing I wanted to ask is that apparently people can't use agents to either block or epoxy / seal the interior of an acrylic tank. And the reason why I'm asking is because I feel like with acrylic tanks and with the research I've been doing, scratches is almost impossible to avoid when it comes to wiping them down. And on top of that, a lot of different chemicals that people would use to polish an acrylic tank isn't technically safe for inside of the tank. So my question is, for those with acrylic tanks, so this is my first acrylic tank that I'm how do people clean out the inside of their tank without scratching it?
Holly's got this.
Magic eraser. I've got acrylic tank.
I have
I
a case of
swear by a magic eraser.
Okay,
I
and then the
I
second
use
question
that, and for the hard stuff, like I get coralline algae grows on mine.
Okay.
And there is like a plastic razor blade.
Yeah.
You can buy. I think I actually sent it to you on your Facebook, or
Oh,
when
yeah,
you
I
posted
saw
the
that.
clip of
Yeah.
Seahorse. Is they sell it at Ace Hardware. It's a plastic razor blade thing.
Oh, okay.
And
Yep.
I use that to scrape the coralline algae off, and it doesn't scratch the tank.
Yeah,
Now,
so
as far as buffing the tank goes, you can
yes.
buff it out, and you can buff it with buffing agents.
Yeah.
The key to it's going to be after you're all done. Well, first of all, if you're using buffers with like compound and stuff like that, you're going to go from a coarse to a fine grit. And
Yeah.
when you get to the finest grit, you've got it smoothed out to where there's not very many ridges in it. And then all you do is fill the tank up with ideally RO water, so it'll leach everything back into the water. And you could just let it soak for 24 hours, rinse it real well, and I wouldn't be afraid to use it. Now, if you're trying to get deposits off of it, an acid will work well. I
So I
used to
use
like.
vinegar.
Well, I use phosphoric acid because phosphoric acid rinses clean and it eats away at it very quickly. And
Okay.
for short durations, it won't harm plexiglass.
Oh,
It takes about 8 hours at 85% concentration to start doing damage to it.
now would I have to worry about hazing the acrylic panels? Because I know certain
Well,
chemicals
if you
haze it.
did the phosphoric for over 8 hours at 85%, yes. But if you're
Yes.
doing it where what I would do with my tanks is I would get a gallon of phosphoric acid. I'd pour
Right.
some in straight strength, and you want to wear heavy duty gloves and you don't want to breathe it.
Oh,
And then I would scrub it. And in this case, being plexiglass, you're going to be a little careful in the scrubbing aspect.
yeah.
But you could just let it sit for about 20 or 30 minutes and then rinse it. And that will take a lot of that stuff off. Vinegar will work, but it takes a lot more. The acidic content of the vinegar is going to be very, very mild.
Yes.
So
Okay.
it doesn't have the same effect in terms of how quick it attacks it.
That works wonderfully. Okay, so I'm gonna reach out to you in a little bit, Dan, just to confirm that ingredient / liquid that you use, because I kind of want to buff that tank up before adding the suba elongatus into it. But one last question that I had in addition to that: do saltwater keepers add a sealant on top of their acrylic tanks to prevent scratching, or is that gonna ruin the acrylic tank?
I don't think it'll ruin the acrylic tank, but my hesitation there is you're talking about leaving a film on the tank permanently.
Yeah.
And I probably wouldn't do that.
Okay.
I would buff it. If I was going to buff it, I would buff it as pretty as I could and then leave it at that. But I'll tell you, if you start buffing, it's going to be a crap load of work. It's not going to be, go out there and hit it real quick and be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent about 3, like telling you, I was like saying, I'm running late, I'm doing my take, like I'm the deep cleaner. But I was using vinegar, and vinegar was tough, man. And the smell, I don't like the smell of vinegar. So that was my biggest concern too, if the vinegar smell was gonna stick to the plastic. So the acrylic is technically a plastic type of plastic, but that's all good to know. One thing I will say, don't use apple cider vinegar. It came up in research that it will cause
Oh,
haziness
and
because of the alcohol and the fermentation process. So
Francis, I have a warning for you on the acrylic tanks too.
okay,
But
tell me.
my first grow out tank was an 85 gallon from Scripps aquarium.
Oh, okay.
Really thick acrylic tank. The seal broke on a corner, flooded my whole room. And
I'm gonna check my tank.
so here's the thing. My husband figured out, kind of engineering wise, the reason why is because this tank, it was like a square box or a rectangle box. It did not have reinforcement at the top. I have another acrylic tank that has a top built on, right?
Yeah,
So,
mine has a top built on.
Or if it has a band around the top, something to hold the top together. So
Oh, Euro bracing.
yeah, some kind of bracing.
Are whole, so it's one single rectangular piece, and then I believe the bottom is the one that's sealed to it. But it looks like everything is perfect. Like it looks like one whole tank. I don't see any silicone, on it.
But
so
it's got like
do
the
you use it
top
from
is
home?
part it's like got a top too, right, to it. So
Yeah, but
the
top is
inside is like
connected.
cool.
So there's
Okay.
like 2 holes at the top and like one
Yes.
suction in the middle.
Good.
My
Good.
display tank is like that. That's excellent. The tank I got from Scripps was not. It was just like a bun. And what happened was the seam split one day out of nowhere.
Okay.
How tall is the tank?
It's pretty tall. It's the same height as my 80 gallons. So I believe it's about 21 inches tall.
Okay.
So it's pretty
Yeah,
tall.
the taller the tank, the higher regardless of the size of the tank, the taller the tank, the more there is for a need for reinforcement.
Yeah. So I am aware of that. So I was planning on putting like little block holders at the 4 corners of the tank.
Shouldn't be necessary.
Pressure support. Now I wanted to ask, are there any items you could buy online in terms of like for reinforcing?
I wouldn't worry about it. If you've got the top piece on there, when they glue those together, the glue that they use is like a weld. It chemically bonds the two materials together. So if it's sealed
so I don't think I have
properly,
to worry about that.
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue. Now,
let me give me 1 second.
Yep.
Hey guys, also I know this is so fun when we all get together on Wednesdays. And Jimbo, I see your question about the Sublime Goddess. I will ask in a moment, but I've got to give like a 10-minute, 15-minute warning because it's like 10:10 here. So I got to get kids and stuff. But Francis, I was just saying, we love that you came, and we could talk all. The dog wants me to shut up. we could sit and talk all night, but I'm gonna give it like a 10-minute, 15-minute warning because I've got kids. It's like 10 o'clock at night here. But Dan, did you want to say something else about the acrylics before we go to the Sublime Goddess?
No, it's all right. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Jimbo wants to know where you got the Sublime Goddess, and if you want to tell us the story about them. What's going on? Where are they now while you're putting together the tank?
So I have my other acrylic tank that I have set up for the past couple of weeks, but it's the same model, it's the same kind, but there's like a really bad scratch at the front. Sorry, my dog.
It's
okay. So someone came home just now, and his
excited.
Is like if I'm busy with something, he has to bark to let me know. But I don't know anything about that. He's like You're not listening to me. You're not
Right.
listening to me.
It's like a child.
Let me show you my other acrylic tank right now because I have it up
Yeah,
right here.
sure.
So real quick, I'll just kind of show you my tanks that I have set up. And I apologize for being a little messy.
No, we're fine. I unfortunately with this software I don't know how to make you big, but we can all see.
So this is my actual Come's 80-gallon tank that I have. And one of the lights is like being a little crazy. But this is having a little bit of an algae issue. The Seahorses are upstairs for the Comes due to their quarantine medical treatment. And then this is the Hystrix aquarium that I have, or Subalongatus. So I'm gonna put it a little closer. I don't know if you guys can see them. See if I can show
Oh
you.
yeah.
Aw.
Aw.
So these guys are about 6 to 7 inches long. There's just 2 of them. As you can see, it's very simple because they're going through their quarantine medical treatment, but it's a very long and fat tank that I have. See if is there a way to make this bigger?
I can't. Unfortunately with this, I mean, hang on, let me try. Let me see. See, unfortunately, it makes me big, and I hate
wait.
that. Hang on. Yeah, I don't know how to do it. So
I think I can share. I think I can share it if I just share this. Oh, I guess I can't. Never mind. It's not.
Yeah, it's the software I'm using. I'm so sorry.
Well, no
People zoom
worries.
in.
But yeah, so this is the Subalongatus. I think one of the questions people ask is where I got these guys.
Oh.
So a little bit, I mentioned a little earlier that these seahorses were first labeled as a long-nosed seahorse. Now, if you guys don't know much about seahorses, I highly recommend looking up the various different species because a lot of species are labeled due to just general characteristics like their noses. So their noses are pretty long. Let's see if I can go in a little closer. So if you can see,
Oh,
they're
wow.
pretty long, right? So I was like, okay, long-nosed seahorse kind of makes sense. But if you see their noses, they're pretty striped. So because they were striped with white and black stripes and because they were prickly, I initially thought Barbary seahorses. I thought the Barbary size was like huge when I first saw those seahorses. But again, when I went to the vendor, he didn't know what they were.
Wait, is this the seahorse that we all thought was Hystrix? Because I was sure. My gosh, I was sure.
And
Wow.
the reason why I wanted to confirm the species because again I didn't know whether it was a legal buy, and whether or not it was collected ethically, right? If it was collected at all. And so with this person is I'm not gonna say his
Yeah, don't. Yeah,
name
please don't. Yeah.
because I'm still talking with Cheryl trying to figure out whether or not his business is ethically correct. And I've been in contact with the California Wildlife Department as well, just to make sure that whatever animals he's bringing in isn't from imported wild-caught areas. And the reason why I did this is because there were warning flags with the details I was being given. First off, even though he initially said they were from Australia, the person who was importing them was Taiwanese or Thai. So I'm like, okay, well, we know that Thailand, Philippines areas, those are pretty big hotspots for wild-caught imports. Like, what are the other questions that I needed to ask were, well, you claim they're captive bred. Do you have their setup? Do you know what the husbandry requirements are like? Because I wasn't believing captive bred after he said the owner or the hobbyist was of a different nationality that isn't Australian. Because again, he told me they were from Australia. So then he tells me that the setup is a big outdoor lagoon pen style and that he can get in huge trouble if he told me like who this person was. And that's
Sounds like net pen. Yeah.
That's why I got in contact with the wildlife department because I wasn't sure. Now, in addition, I also reached out to Australia to confirm, because one thing that I was let know was that there are no current captive bred Subalongatus or Hystrix species currently imported from Australia. And the biggest, easiest way to do that was to reach directly to the wholesaler that's very well known for importing seahorses to figure out whether or not this seahorse was a species that the vendor was claiming it to be, or if it was something different. Now, because of the morphological characteristics of these seahorses, we initially assumed they were Hystrix based on their thorniness, their spines, and their size. But when I sent the pictures over to Australia, if it's a US seahorse distributor, I think they're the ones that do the weedy sea dragons as well. They reached out to confirm the species, and then I was also talking with them what the correct protocol would be in order to handle the ethical issues
Right.
involved in this kind of transaction. Now, with that being said, when the seahorses arrived at the vendor's place, he mentioned that they passed through customs and they passed through the site's permits to requirements. Another warning flag for me that these are wild caught, because if they're captive bred, I don't believe there would be those regulations with them.
Are there, Dan?
But I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that.
Oh, he must have stepped away. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you guys hollering at me?
Yeah.
Oh, I just asked. He said that because when they passed, these sublongatas passed through customs. What did you say? Go ahead, Francis. Repeat it.
Because they passed through customs, they still fit the size permit to regulations for the 10 centimeter size requirement. And that requirement is to prevent any young seahorse being caught and collected, which would drastically affect their sustainability in the oceans.
Yeah, that would be a great rule if it applied to all seahorses. The problem is that not all seahorses get that big.
Yeah, so because of that, these seahorses came through, and there was only 2 that this vendor picked up, because this distributor that's at the wholesale center in Long Beach only allowed businesses to pick up 2 at a time. And that's why I was able to receive these 2, because I went directly from my house to his place, hour and a half away, to check them out, observe them, look at their behavior, see if they were eating before deciding to bring them back home. In addition, I made sure to check his permit for the sites too, to ensure that if he did have a business relationship with someone overseas, that the permits at least were updated, and to ensure that, again, it fit the site's regulations.
Well, real quick, I'm going to cut in real quick and say that Jimbo was asking questions about just what you're saying. And
Yeah.
the thing is that Steve McLeod, and we're not saying anybody did anything, but I can tell you that Steve McLeod is very legal. He does everything professionally. He's amazing. And Seahorse Australia is doing captive bred. And they don't like to ship to the U.S. because customs is such a butthead. But it could be all above board, is what I'm saying. We just don't know.
And then there's the other rationale that this person that's selling them is
doing something shady, right?
Lagoon, but because of the permit expenses, that could be the other legal issue that's currently going on over there at that place. So I don't this was a very lucky find for me. I don't think this will happen again anytime soon with that person, or with that vendor, because of the restrictions that are in place.
Right.
And because of all my questions, I think he's a little bit nervous.
Leery of you, for sure.
I've been asking lots of questions. And that's me though, but because I'm super nice, I still have a good relationship with that vendor. And on top of that, another reason why I decided to trust his explanations, because this was the first vendor I met that wasn't from a storefront, was that he explicitly has business relationships with SeaWorld and the zoo in San Diego, and he supplies a lot of phytoplankton and pteropods for both educational centers. So because of that, and because I was able to confer and confirm his expertise and his relations, that was the other one that I was like, okay, it seems legitimate. They don't seem that sick. I'll try it and see what happens versus not trying and then
Yeah.
hearing from him, because he would let me know if some of his animals have died. Like that's how our relationship works. In order to prevent any quarrels I might be getting from him, transferring anything yucky into my reef tank that I have. So he's a little nervous, I think, with the Seahorses, because even he admitted that that transaction was not the best from backgrounds, and that's something again to always ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. It doesn't make you a worse caretaker. It makes you a better caretaker. Might as well get all the info then after issues happen.
And Jimbo, I didn't realize you worked there. What I was gonna say is I'll hit Francis up on the side and get you some names. I just don't want it put on the
Yeah, for
channel
sure.
because we can get in trouble. Yeah,
Mhm.
and you don't
My
want to say
name
something
again,
when we don't have
confidentiality.
right.
Hello.
And but would love to talk to you more, Jimbo, too. I am gonna have to cut it off soon, guys. I have to, but
Yeah.
love this conversation. And Francis, so far they're doing well though, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
so
that's
they're
them.
actually eating frozen now. And
Yay.
that was again the other behavior I wanted to look at. Because chances are, if they're captive bred, as the guy was saying, they should be eating captive bred food options like frozen maíz shrimp, etc. Now, when I first got these guys, I noticed their bag contained tiger pods, but no maíz shrimp. And I'm like, okay, well, maíz shrimp is going to degrade. That makes sense. Let's see how they eat later that night. And they refuse to eat. They refuse to eat any of my offerings that I gave to them except for the amphipods culture that I had. So the first week was amphipod feeding, spot feeding. I did, I think, 10 amphipods per seahorse initially for the first 2-3 days just to get their energy up. And then I started mixing in frozen maíz shrimp. The way I did it was for every 2 amphipods I had, I would put in 1 maíz shrimp, and I would take out those 2 amphipods to allow the seahorses to try to eat the maíz shrimp. But what was great was that the amphipods actually crawled all over the maíz shrimp, encouraging the seahorses to
Snick it.
No, it was
Real quick. Dan, are you still here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I just had one question regarding Francis's story, and that is, do you think he would have had better luck if he had fed only frozen, like the tough love thing, fed only frozen mice from the start? Obviously, Cheryl's saying no. Nope.
I would say no.
That's a tough call. The way that we do it is that, or the way we did it was, we would offer the frozen up into the very end of the day. We'd offer a small amount of live brine, and or in the case if I had a real picky one, maybe I'd have some live mice if necessary. But most of the time, I can get them on to eating frozen within the first 48 hours, no problem.
Okay.
Wow. Well, I mean, in Francis, you did within a week, right? I mean,
yeah, I wouldn't say 48 hours for me, but I did do the whole tough love at first because I'm way used to tough love over here. But because again, the background of the Subelongatus was a little bit murky, I didn't leave the maíz shrimp longer than 3 minutes just to see if they were interested, and I saw that they weren't. And that's when I decided to do the amphipods. Now, one thing I
wasn't criticizing you. We all
so
like to love ask questions.
Every way is different
Yes.
when it's acclimating and training seahorses to eat. But what helped me was my quarantine tank for the tiger seahorse comes, or the tiger tail seahorse male, was right next to their quarantine tank initially. And when I was feeding the seahorse in the comes, in the medical tank, for the first couple of days was the Copepod mush and maíz mush. But the Subelongators were able to see him, and within the third day of doing the live amphipods with the Subelongatus, they were still watching my seahorse male finally getting off of the Copepods to try eating the maize shrimp that was in the same tank. And that I know, like, this is me with behaviors and observing. Like, this is why I do a lot of behavioral protocol programs, is because I would see the Subelongatus looking through the tank at the other seahorse, and then when he would stare at it for 10 seconds, and I'm watching it like a couple feet away, trying to see, oh, like, is he learning? Is he trying to learn from that seahorse?
And they are.
Just went down to its own maize strip and just snicked it very lightly. Very lightly.
That's one of the tricks that Cheryl has, and Dan and Holly, everybody has suggested.
Yeah, they will learn from each other.
You have fry that won't.
And it's easier, I think, if a seahorse is already trained, that can teach the other seahorses. So because of that, in the live amphipods, the Subelongatus have been eating the captive bred frozen options, but they are more picky, I realized. So if I offer the maize shrimp 3 times a day, they will refuse to eat it at night. However, if I offer maize shrimp twice a day in amphipods at night or as an enrichment, they'll go for the amphipods by far. And I think it's because of their bigger stature, their size. Definitely makes a difference, because my Colemanses couldn't handle the amphipods. They were too small.
Right.
You know, but these guys were able to snick them pretty consistently and pretty quickly. So that's been very, very helpful with these seahorses. And yeah, any other questions about these guys?
I just think it's great. And Jimbo, with your comments, I mean, I wish I could get these species. I'm jealous as heck, and I can't.
Breed, hopefully, but I'm not entirely sure they're opposite sex though. I think they might be both female, but I'm not entirely sure.
Right.
Because with me and sexing seahorses, I can only sex males. Males have the pouch. I'm like, all right, hello, let's go. Girls, I'm like, do you have a pouch? Are you too young? I don't know if you. I don't know.
We've talked before about, though. Cheryl's seen. Many of us have seen a female turn male because they wanted to. So you never know.
There was an article that I actually shared with Heather about that. Where fish species have certain regulatory hormones, and sometimes it doesn't happen every single seahorses, I don't think, but it's well documented in the aquatic world that these fish will. I lost my train of thought. Oh my goodness, my apologies.
You know what? Ask anybody. I do it all the time. I'm rambling, and then I'm like, oh.
It's a long day. My apologies.
Actually, to be really honest, you guys, I'm so sorry, and I know Holly and Cheryl and Dan didn't get a chance. Do you guys have any last minute questions for Francis? Because I want to say, first of all, Jimbo, I'd love to. Chris comes often to the show, but I'd love to send you a link if you ever want to join in and actually chat with us on video. And Francis, you're welcome back anytime. I will talk to Dan
every Wednesday.
There you go. I will talk to Dan later to verify and post whether or not we're going to be able to do the second episode of Ask Seahorse Source next week. If that's the case, it will be just him. But any other week, you're more than welcome to jump in. I love these group conversations. They're great. My kids are like banging on doors saying, come on, Mommy. So I'm going to have to call it for tonight. But Jimbo, no, I personally haven't seen wait, I'm lying. I've seen a female let's just say that I thought was a female turn male. Dan, haven't you seen a female turn male?
Yes, I have, but I do have to go, so I'm wish y'all a good night. But yeah, I've seen it. I've got 3 or 4 documented cases of it.
Okay, so next week, Jimbo, we'll chat more about that. But everybody, thank you so much for coming. I'm not trying to cut you guys off.
Because Jimbo's question is.
Hey, Dan, thank you for coming, and take care of yourself.
Yeah, Francis, go ahead.
One thing I would like to say is not mix your seahorses, because if one is untrained, more than likely it's wild caught, and there will be potential issues, whether it's parasites, diseases. Be safe, keep them separated in a separate tank, but let them see each other through the walls.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That's great advice. But Jimbo actually works at Seahorse Australia.
Oh,
and I think Yeah, and I think he was actually talking like what we were saying, like with fry. If I
Okay.
have my own captive bred that I have bred seahorses, and then I have another batch, and the second batch is not weaning onto frozen foods,
Yeah.
then I may
Yeah.
very well put one of my
Fry.
olders in there. So,
Yeah,
but
I
your
agree.
advice was good. Your advice.
There's
Okay,
wildlife. No.
okay, we could chat all night, guys, but I've got to call it. So everybody say cheers.
Cheers.
See you next week.
Cheers.